The academy, it's like you get there and it's like I'm nothing. I'm starting over. I could go and be a pilot. I could go and be a surface ship driver. I could go be a Marine. The Naval Academy makes the Marine Corps officers.
Yeah, right. But I wouldn't think that would be the case, only because they spent all of this money on you and that pipeline.
I am an incredible waste of money. That's what. When you look at the amount of
my
school,
parents have probably said the same thing.
Well, that's true for you, Sean.
Thanks, Rob.
So everybody, we're sitting here with another episode of Mentors for Military, and we're sitting here with Will. So Will, thank you for coming in here, man. You're coming all the way from DC.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Yeah, so I want to get into your background because this is an episode that you probably know the number of it. Actually, it's like 174 or something like that was the last time we had somebody with a background similar to yours.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
We got called out.
We did get called out.
Good.
See, he remembers that.
Good.
I told you, so Will actually reached out. We have a number of different ways in which people get on the show, and Will actually sent me a post via LinkedIn, and the starting line was something along the effect of, the last time you had one of my kind on was episode, and did the whole thing, and he's like, I think it's about time to have another on. So welcome to the show, Will. You're here.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Hey, before we get down track here, I do need to say I am actively serving right now. I'm not a veteran. I'm a commander in the Navy right now.
Oh, wow.
Which that means that anything I do say, I need to be very clear, it's just me. It's not a representative of the Navy or Department of War or anything like that.
All right, so first question, what is a commander in the Navy?
Well, that is an 05.
Okay.
So I am not commanding anything right now. I'm commanding a desk. It's a very fine cubicle in the Pentagon, and I look at spreadsheets. I'm in between sea tours right now, but that's where I'm at.
Lieutenant Colonel in the Marine Corps, Army,
Yeah.
Air Force.
Yeah.
You guys have the weird rank structure. The only one.
You guys have the weird rank.
Ours is really easy.
When you're the only one that does that, you're the weird one. Okay.
But then you go into the question, which one was stood up first, the Army or the Navy?
That's it. Well, Marine Corps, I think, also has a fight in that as well.
It's still the Navy.
Yeah, but can you whoop mine? You know what I mean?
We're not going to put Will on the spot about Marines and Navy.
No.
We will. Are we going to talk about
What about it?
So,
Your thoughts, go.
go.
I love my Marines. I don't know that we necessarily need 31 amphibious assault ships, but smarter people than me answer those questions. But
Well, I mean, there's somebody up there in the Pentagon that goes, how many amphibious assault ships do we need? And somebody else is going, always one more.
there are a lot of people answering those questions.
Yeah.
Asking those questions and answering them. And then Congress does whatever Congress wants to do.
Yeah.
That's how it all works.
So you're originally from Louisiana.
That's right. So I enlisted in the Navy out of high school. Kyle and I did not grow up together, but we could have.
I mean, you guys could be family.
We did talk about that.
Yeah. What, the family part?
Yeah.
Well, we won't bring up the other family member.
Yeah.
We'll bring that up later.
Yeah. I'm not going to I'm not going to escape that, am I?
No.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. So
I'm Brittany, bitch. I'm sorry. Sorry, it was inside of me. It was inside of me.
That was cool.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
it's actually inside all of us. Where?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Commander,
so
Pentagon.
I graduated high school in 2001, and basically a couple of weeks after graduating high school, shipped out to the Navy. Basically,
Enlisted route.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. My parents would have preferred me to go to college, but I didn't really see a path for paying for it. And the Navy seemed like a great, kind of answer to a lot of questions. I wanted to get as much training and as much kind of upskilling as possible. My parents advised me that, one thing is, hey, if you can put up with the military, it can really set you ahead in life. And if you can just put up with the bullshit, then there's a lot of ways that it can hook you up. And they were absolutely right. Like, it doesn't work out for many people as well as it has worked out for me.
What was your rating then when you went in? What did you choose?
Went in as a nuclear power electrician.
Oh, you went in when my son wanted to go in. I was going to ask you what your recruiting experience was like with the Navy. Like, how was that experience? Because we talk about it a lot from the Army perspective, you know, Marine. So what was your recruiting
Basically,
like?
you know, I marched into a recruiting station with a bunch of my friends. Like, we all were like, "Hey, let's go join the Navy." Like, okay, and so we all said we were going to do it together. And then, like, I ended up being the only one that stepped out, you know. But and then in MEPS, they were like, "Hey, you should do this nuclear power thing." And the other thing my parents advised me is always seek more school. You know, if they offer you more school, more training, just take it, because all that is upskilling and, you know, builds your value. And so the nuclear power community is just a really nerdy, you know, community, and a lot of school. And so I said, "Hey, sounds great. Let's do that." And so I went in as an electrician's mate to basically be a technician to work in the nuclear power plant of either an aircraft carrier or a submarine. And when I first went in, it was to go on aircraft carrier, and then kind of halfway through the nuclear power training program, I was impressed by several of the chief petty officers, which are the senior enlisted in the Navy. You know, several of the chiefs that were kind of mentors to me and as a student in the training program were really gung-ho about submarines. I'm like, I don't know why, but okay, that sounds cool. I'll do that, I guess, you know.
It's a cool badge.
It is.
I've seen the submarine.
Sure.
Have you ever seen the submarine badge? Pretty cool.
Well, I mean, it takes a special breed of individual as well. So like you don't have any claustrophobia or anything, or where did you ever figure that out at some point?
Yeah, no claustrophobia. And actually, like, you have people that don't adapt. You don't really have it. It's rarely because of claustrophobia. It's, you know, it's other reasons usually. But,
Yeah.
you know, I think if someone is claustrophobic, they know it, and you have to volunteer to go subs. So they're just not going to volunteer for subs.
Yeah, that'd be a dumb decision.
Yeah, that'd be silly.
That'd be something I would do.
Yeah.
I mean, so the only way, as I understand it, that you end up going into that type of MOS, especially on submarines too, is typically you have a high AFQT, Armed Forces Qualification Test score, or an ASVAB score as well. This isn't like just they take some really smart individuals on those types of.
It's some very high quality people.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I really like about the submarine force is it is the highest quality people that I've found anywhere. You know, it's a bunch of weirdos. You know, but you know, I'm one of them. And yeah.
I mean, from the outside looking in, and just, you know, hearing some of the things that my son was talking about when he went in. He's a Marine now, but he tried to go in nuclear, and so he gave me some of the background. I mean, it's not something for everybody else. It's not something that you can just go into the Navy and go, "Hey,
That's kind of what
I want to go nuclear," and then like, "Yeah, go ahead." Is it that you have to go in as something else and then kind of be accepted into the program?
No,
or how does that work?
It's not like that. I mean, if you've got the test scores for it, they will, you know, throw everything at you to get you to go do it, because
Gotcha.
it's a hard thing to recruit for.
Yeah.
Because usually the people who can do the program could also go to college, and that's not necessarily true for everything else. You know. So a lot of the, you know, nuclear power people, you know, a lot of our nuclear trained people are people who went to college and then just, you know, it didn't work out for one reason or another.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you got the scores, they're very happy to take you for it. It's a hard thing to recruit for, a hard thing to retain for.
Are they just figuring that out off the ASVAB?
Yeah, and then you take another test.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. Do they end up switching you guys between submariners then and aircraft carriers, or do you like define, I am this?
You define.
Okay.
Basically, once you're either a surface nuke or submariner, you know.
Okay.
And, you'll take
That sounds
the path from
intense.
Yeah.
there.
So what was the initial training like then? Was it more of like in the sub or on an aircraft carrier, or were you actually more school trained and less on the job in terms of in one of those environments?
It's about a year of classroom training.
Okay.
First, you've got like your first 6 months of your enlisted rate. You know, we don't call it a MOS, we call it a rate in the Navy, and it's you know, so for me it was like electrical theory and electronics and troubleshooting and all that kind of stuff. And then you go to another 6 months of nuclear power school, which even as an enlisted guy, it's all nuclear physics and it's very like the officer and enlisted nuclear power school is actually very similar. Just the difference is whether it's calculus-based physics or algebra-based physics.
Holy crap.
But what really remarkable is like, later when I went to be an officer, I majored in mechanical engineering, and I'm taking all these engineering courses, and I'm learning all this. I'm learning calculus for the first time, but I'm realizing that I had learned it. No one told me it was calculus. It's like we're deriving the area under a curve and everything, and it's like this thing is a derivative. I'm like, no, that's rate of change. I learned that in nuclear power school as an enlisted guy. And so basically, reactors are very nonlinear beasts. It's a lot of math.
Yeah.
You got to math good, to do the nuclear power school thing.
Where was the school at?
Anyway, yeah, it's in Charleston, South Carolina.
Not a bad place to be.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I guess I didn't ever. I don't know why I thought the Navy's program for submarines or whatever would be like more San Diego, West Coast, not East Coast.
So basically, they have a big, like, it's called Naval Weapons Station, but it's not a naval weapons station anymore. It's a lot of land that the Navy owns. And the last guest that you had, I listened to that podcast, and he went to school. Whenever he went to nuclear power school, it was in Orlando, and they moved it. Whenever I went there, it was only a few years old. They basically built a whole new school there, and that's like the whole classroom portion of it is there. And then you go to what's called prototype, which is you basically have a nuclear propulsion plant of a submarine just in a building. And it is a critical reactor. It comes up and you start up and shut down the reactor and do all the things that you have to do on a ship. You're actually running the whole steam plant and all that and run around. It's an important part of training. That's about another 6 months. When you add all that up and like the time in between it, and as an officer, you also go to another school. It ends up being about 2 years of training before you ever get to a ship.
Yeah, that's why I was asking about that, because you think about most other military occupational specialties or rates, as it is with the Navy, you're on, especially with the Army, I can speak to that. You're on the vehicle, you're on whatever, you're using the weapons that you're going to use and those types of things. I mean, you were doing it, but you weren't physically on a ship or a submarine. So
it's kind of like Bradley Master Gunner School when you go in and you're going to have a turret sitting outside of the Bradley. So that way you can do everything as far as like gun theory and everything that all the electronics of the turret, you can see it. You can mess with it, but you don't have to do it in the environment that it's in.
There's something to be said, though, about being the actual thing. And,
once you get to a ship, you're doing all that. You're relearning, and it's a new ship, a new plant. There's gonna be differences, and you're learning all that.
So, what was your first assignment coming out of school? And did you get to pick it?
Well, so I actually went officer from nuclear power school. So my enlisted time, yes, I am prior enlisted, but I'm not like this.
It was a
salty sea dog. It's a couple of years.
You didn't have a swab a deck or anything.
I swabbed many a deck.
Okay,
just
gotcha.
They were in buildings. So I applied for basically every officer program I could as soon as I could, as part of the whole Mama said get more school. So, okay, get more school. Got it. And just applied for everything I could. And the Naval Academy is the first thing they called back, and
while you were in the training that's wild. So was there one of the chiefs or something that advised you this route, or?
They actually have, so the nuclear power program itself actually has, I think, the highest enlisted to officer ratio of anywhere, just because of the people that
because you guys are smart.
They've got. You said it, not me. The
book smart, not street smart.
not social smart.
Yeah.
They have like a chief there that it helps you, and that was great. But anyway, so all my friends are getting their assignments to submarines, and it said, "Oh, Spears, you're going to Naval Academy." Like, whoa, what? Okay, I guess.
So the other people didn't apply for the same type of opportunity then?
No.
Okay.
A lot of people are just because you got to commit to more time, and that's the biggest barrier for most people. I came to join the Navy for a few years, and I don't want to sign up for another 8 years of bullshit. And so
What was that like coming into Annapolis then as a former enlisted? Because you really are still a former enlisted.
I was the worst midshipman ever. Yes. As a so a midshipman is what you call a student at the Naval Academy. Just at West Point, it's a cadet.
And
I had a bad attitude cause like, I thought I was Mr. Badass adult. I had an apartment and I paid rent and I had beer in the fridge and all those things. And now I've got this like 19-year-old puffing up his chest, telling me about life and death. And like, what is this? And it's going from, going from kind of feeling like an adult, even though I really wasn't, and then going into the academy where it's like this whole boot camp thing again. And now like, instead of like a couple of weeks, it's like a year. Your entire freshman year, you're doing stupid stuff that is embarrassing, and it's just to look silly. And there's people that are like, oh well, this is teaching you all these lessons about life and leadership and all this stuff. And like, why am I high kneeing through the hallways? Like, why am I doing that? Yes, tell me more about why this is gonna help me save more lives someday. Sure. Yeah.
So when you were going through the academy and everything, you already knew that you were going to come out the same. You were still going to stay on submarines, or
no,
were
so
you?
I actually didn't. You've got various different officer programs, and a lot of people will not sign up for the academy because it sucks to go to a service academy.
Sure.
And you've got other programs where you can go to civilian college where you can pretty much act like a civilian.
ROTC.
And They have other programs like that where the Navy will pay someone to go. But the advantage of the academy over those other programs is that it's a clean slate, and you basically can go any officer path from there. You start completely over. Whereas the other ones, you have to basically sign up and say like, I want to be a nuclear submarine officer. And they're like, okay, we'll send you to college for that. The academy, it's like you get there and it's like, I'm nothing. I'm starting over. I could go and be a pilot. I could go and be a surface ship driver. I could go be a Marine. The Naval Academy makes the Marine Corps officers.
Yeah, right. But I wouldn't think that would be the case, only because they spent all of this money on you and that pipeline.
I am an incredible waste of money. That's what. When you look at the amount of
My
school,
parents have probably said the same thing.
Well, that's true for you, Sean.
Thanks, Rob.
So what, you laugh, like the 2 years that I was in school before, I go to the academy, I go to the academy and all my high school friends are like, what, you're still in school?
Right, totally.
And then, you come out of the academy, you go to more school. So while I was at the academy, I was kind of starting over and like, well, maybe I want to go be a pilot, and looking at all these different options and kind of figured out that's not really my dream. I don't know. And what ultimately made me pick submarines and just like sealed it was they have this thing called the submarine birthday ball. And it's just like any other military ceremonial ball. You have the cake cutting and you have various ceremonies and stuff like that. And my date to it actually is the mother of my children now. But I was like, okay, the submarine birthday ball, that sounds cool. Let me go to that. See what it's about. And so at my table is like this wrinkly old guy. And I noticed that they had basically, whoever put the thing together had placed at these various tables like these just really old guys that just kind of
gray beards,
and what they were is old veterans, old submarine veterans.
Sure.
And I'm sitting at this table, I'm like, oh crap, who's this guy? Like, I'm gonna have to listen to him tell his story and pretend to be interested. All of this.
What a dick.
Yeah, and I would tell I was a dick. And then I started talking to this guy and learned that, whenever he was in command of a submarine at 25, in World War II, and, how basically he was telling me about the day that he was death charged for, about a day and a half. And I'm just like, at that point, I'm just like, all right, no matter what I ever do, I'm not going to amount to a wart on this guy's ass,
Holy shit.
And that's where I'm just like, okay, I'm home. Like, this is where I belong.
You can't rent a car, but you can be a commander of a sub.
Nuclears.
Well, that was World War II.
Yeah, that's true.
That was decent,
That's
right?
diesel back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. But still incredible.
Yeah. And so that whoever figured out that let's put the old sub vets around and let them talk to the midshipmen, like that was brilliant. And that's kind of, the sub force was just, it's dark, it's kind of creepy and it's different, and it's just completely different from anything else It's machines, and I'm a machine guy. I like machines.
I can totally hear
It's
the
like
radio.
the dark web of the Navy.
Yeah.
I can hear the whole radio bit though. Okay, we got Will over here. He's thinking about leaving submarines. Put the old guy next to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Switch table 4 to 3.
You spent way too much money on this guy.
And so that's basically at that point I was sold, and I was like, yep, well, this is where I want to go, and that's how it worked out from there.
Okay, so after now, this was at what point in?
That was like
4 years.
sophomore year at the Naval Academy. You know?
So what do you do, like, for the Army? A lot of guys end up going to, they may go off to airborne school or air assault or, do different things. For Navy guys, did you get a chance to do any time somewhere on an aircraft carrier or whatever? While
while you're at the academy,
yeah.
they'll send you. They call them midshipman cruises. Like during the summer, you'll go and spend a month on a surface ship or something like that. And so I did things where I got to go hang out with aviators, and they're so cool, and they have. Aviators are cool. I mean, come on.
Yeah. CPLT kind of like
Yeah.
They got their own little cool scarves and sunglasses. And,
I think this is the Blue Angels.
No, I think all of them do. All the fighter ones.
Oh, the
anyway.
scarves?
Yeah, the scarves. Fighter.
I don't know.
Anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, I did. So I did those kind of events.
Yeah.
But I mean, by the time that I was doing those events, I was already decided. Like I already knew what I wanted to do.
But
You didn't go to submarines at any time during the academy.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a short ride. I was like, oh, finally,
what do you guys consider a short ride?
I mean, it was like a day underwater.
Oh, yeah.
It was like go out, go under, come back.
Yeah.
Does that kind of seal the deal at that point for you?
I was already done at that point. I was already bought in. So the midshipman cruise, like then years later, whenever I have like I'm on a ship and I'm trying to run the ship, like midshipman cruises are a pain in the ass.
I was about to ask, what was the temperament of the crew when you would bring the midshipmen?
Well, they're very receptive, and
that's good.
They have to be,
Yeah. Sounds about part. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still not saluting the fucking cadet. I don't care.
No, you don't. That's cadets and midshipmen don't rate a salute. But no, whenever you have midshipmen on board, it's very important that you make a good impression, because not only is it, you want as many of them to want to come to submarines as possible, because so that you can have the best selection of, people. You get the best quality, but also for the ones that don't come submarines, like that's their experience. That's what they're going to know the rest of their life from submarines. So if you have the crews like whining and complaining about how bad it is, then that they're gonna walk away with a bad impression. That's just what they're gonna have for the rest of their lives.
And that resonates too.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a commander on a ship, and you just think about the last time you were in a submarine.
Yeah.
And you have them as part of your arsenal. And you're just like,
but usually the crew, the crew is extremely proud of whatever it is that they do and whatever it is they know, and they're very happy to explain it and eager to explain it to anyone who's interested. So if you ever find yourself on board a submarine or any Navy ship, I mean, it's true anywhere else, but like the best gift you can give somebody that is sitting there doing his job is interest in what they do, and credit for what they know.
Yeah.
Did you get like a dream sheet of like, where do you want to go? What class sub? How does that work?
You get a dream sheet and you put in what you want, and then they try to line it up, but usually everyone asks for the same thing. Everyone wants to go to Pearl Harbor. Everyone.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I didn't either. I wasn't even thinking about that location. Yeah. Makes sense.
We have a lot of attack subspace out of Pearl Harbor, and you can basically say where I want to be stationed, or you can say I would rather be on an attack sub, or I'd rather be on a Trident missile submarine. And most people want to go on an attack sub, and I did. So I asked for Guam. That we based some submarines out of Guam, and it's kind of like the at the time it had a reputation of being kind of the Wild West of the submarine force, and so that's where I wanted to go.
The Korea of the submarines.
That was probably a pretty good assignment, though. I mean, Guam's a pretty cool place.
It was great, and a lot of people will complain about it. I love Guam, and it's a port call that you're almost guaranteed to get if you're on a Western Pacific ship, because it's we have a lot of infrastructure there, so we have the parts and things that we can fix whatever's broken on the ship in a way that we can't if you pull into Yokosuka or some other port. So you're like guaranteed to pull into Guam, and a lot of people are like, oh, Guam again. I love Guam. You know, the hiking's beautiful, the diving's beautiful. You know, it's hot, but okay. And
you're on a tropical island. I mean, I didn't know that it wasn't normally hot in a tropical island.
It's freaking hot in Guam. You know, like Hawaii's like mild. Hawaii's like temperate.
Are you closer to the equator at that point? I'm trying to think of like where, because it's south of Hawaii, way south of Hawaii.
Yeah, and actually Hawaii's way south. Hawaii is like the southernmost part of the United States, I think.
Yeah, but it doesn't look that way on a globe, though.
Right. If you got to like tweak it and look at it, you know. But yeah, Guam's like way over there, and it's a tiny, tiny little island.
Yeah.
You know?
So okay, let's go back to the the sub classifications.
Yeah.
You mentioned, you know, fighter or whatever. Tell us
Attack.
some of the attack or whatever.
So he said fighter.
He didn't say fighter. I guess attack. So tell us the differences between these.
You've basically got two. You know, you've got a third, but it's a minority. It's not doesn't necessarily play into the two models. The attack submarines are your multi-purpose ships. They're designed to sink ships. That's what they do. They're designed to find, and they're really optimized to hunt submarines, which is a thing to really hunt a submarine well. You need a submarine, you know, and you know, all our anti-submarine forces involve airplanes and other kinds of sensors and all kinds of stuff. It's a networked thing, but the best agent of your anti-submarine force is a attack submarine, and they're also made to sink surface ships. But when they're not sinking ships, what are you doing with them? Well, anything that you can think of that would be useful to do with an invisible warship. That's what a submarine is. All of your military utility from a submarine comes from the fact that it is invisible. So you can use your imagination on what kinds of things we might do with an invisible warship. The other side of that, the other class of warship or kind of submarine that we have is the Trident missile submarine, which is an SSBN or ballistic missile submarine. And what it is, it's like the Hunt for Red October style ship. It's like the Red October. It's basically a ton of missile tubes of really, really big missiles that do exactly what you think they do. And you build a submarine around it. And you basically, its purpose is to always be available to wage war if required. And basically you go out and you're in communications, no one can find you, no one knows where you are. And so it's survivable. There's no taking out that option, no taking out that deterrent in any kind of massive strike.
What can you share with us about how long you can actually be underwater in both those classifications?
So the longest I think I've been under at a stretch is like 70 or 80 days. Or so.
Okay. I don't know why somebody told me it's more like, you know, a long time. Like
so it can be, that's the longest like sunlight to sunlight, you know, for me. I've met people that have done like 140 days, but you've also got a deployment, which is like 6 months. And so that's where there's a lot of confusion here. So an attack submarine, and really most surface ships operate on this deployment schedule where it's like nominally, and you know, nominally never truly happens, but a nominal deployment cycle is like 18 months of workup. And that workup cycle is like your ship is based in a home port somewhere, your family, you live there. And whenever the ship's in port, like that's where you work, you know, that's your office. You go to the ship and you're doing work on the ship. You're tearing everything up and fixing everything and putting it all back together. And then the ship goes out and, you know, dorks around the locals and does small, easy stuff to do that's nearby. And you kind of learn, the crew learns how to boat, you know, the crew learns how to operate and do simple stuff. And you work up to being ready to deploy. And then when you deploy, you leave the local operating area, and then you basically report to a different operational commander. And that commander tasks you to do with whatever he needs an invisible warship to do. And you roughly do that for 6 months. And so most of that time you're out underway, and you know, you're underwater and unseen, unheard. And then every now and then you'll pull into a port for a few days and, you know, load new parts and load new food, get new food, and then get back out there. And so you end up being kind of limited by your food. is actually.
I was going to say that surely there's a limiting factor. I get that, but there's probably the wartime environment, and then there's the peacetime, because peacetime is, as you described it, very mission oriented, based on, you know, what you call a deployment. We'd probably call it a training exercise, or, you know, whatever. But in the wartime, it might be a little bit different in terms of structure and time limits, and maybe the rate limiting factor would be the food type of thing.
Yeah, so you get underway with like a nominal 90-day food loadout or something like that.
Okay.
So, some food loadout for some amount of time, but you can do all kinds of funky things to stretch it, you know, if you need to. And the submarine force actually has really good food. One thing that it does really well is the food tends to be very good because you have a small crew, and so the cooks can put a lot of effort into it and make it good. But if you're underway for a long period of time and it's like, hey, we need to stay here because we need to observe this thing or whatever. We need to be where we're at. We cannot pull off. How much food we got? Okay, well, what are we going to do to make that stretch? And so you start doing funky things with the food to make it, you know.
A lot of similarities. I mean, Army is the same way. You know, days of supply. So, hey, we're 14 DOS. And we work, you know, what we can do with that. And I mean, most of what we do, if not all of what we do, is we're just kind of tied to supply.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
we got
absolutely.
fuel, food, ammunition.
Yeah.
So
the biggest bonus that we have as a submarine is nuclear power. And that's a big difference in surface ships, is that we bring our power plant with us and we don't have to refuel. So
what can you talk about just briefly is the difference between something like a diesel-powered submarine and a nuclear-powered submarine, as you say that, without OPSEC?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. The nuclear-powered submarine is going to be much bigger, much faster. Its top speed is going to be a lot faster. So, and that's, you know, if you're doing like a sub-on-sub engagement or something like that, you're not typically running around at your top speed because that can be noisy. But what that really does is, from the operational standpoint of being able to get from point A to point B, a nuclear submarine is enormously more versatile. So basically, when the sub leaves port and submerges, it just becomes this red circle that's growing on every adversary's screen. That could be anywhere. The sub could be anywhere in that spot. So if a diesel sub's little circle is going to grow a lot slower, and that, from a strategic standpoint of, you know, moving pieces around on the chessboard, a nuclear submarine is just a huge confounding factor of any kind of risk calculus of an enemy, because it can just be anywhere very quickly, and you have no idea where it is. So the nuclear power, the submarine can, that's what the speed buys you. A diesel submarine has to recharge its batteries at some periodicity. Now, modern diesel submarines are actually, they're very damned effective ships for what they're for. They're very good as an asymmetric thing to throw a monkey wrench in the plans of a big, powerful adversary like us, because whenever they're running around on their batteries, they're extremely quiet and extremely hard to find. We still know how to find them, but it's harder. You know, a nuclear submarine is generally, most of them are not as quiet as a diesel submarine on the batteries. The problem, the Achilles heel of a diesel submarine is that you have to recharge your batteries, and you're whenever you run the diesel, like, we're going to suck you up right away. You know,
I'll be darned.
What's the again, whatever you can share, the greatest depth that you've gone, or what can you say the depth is that they do normally, or
what else? So Wikipedia, that it will say, greater than 26 knots of a top speed for a typical attack submarine, and greater than 800 feet. That sounds deep, but if you look at it on the side, on the scale of the ocean, like, anything that's at, we're really scratching the surface of the ocean at that level of depth. Whenever you consider how freaking deep the ocean actually is, whenever you get off continental shelves and stuff like that, it is extremely deep. You don't get a lot of tactical advantage from going way deeper than that. So you can build a submarine to go deeper than ours normally operate, but it doesn't buy you a lot, because a lot of what you get out of your depth is basically being able to go below thermal layers in the water. because that has to do with the tactics of how you can stay hidden, and basically sound will bounce off of a thermal layer, and after you get past a certain depth, the layer just becomes kind of isovelocity, and there's no real difference. And so
that's a great way of explaining it. I mean, I know from, scuba diving and everything, what is it? Every 33 feet is an atmospheric pressure. So when you're talking now 800 feet, that's a shit ton of pressure that's on that ship at that depth.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about being able to hide. It makes a lot of sense. They'll only go as deep as you need to in order to break that barrier where they can't find you.
I mean, there's other advantages to being deep. Like you've got the cavitation, for example, is something that your propeller. If I hear a torpedo coming at me, I'm going to say all head flank cavitate. What that means is change speed, go as fast as you can without concern for cavitation. What is cavitation? That's whenever you run your blender, you see little bubbles, and what that is the blades of that blender going through the water cause this little spot of low pressure in the water below, where it basically makes the water below the boiling point, or above it lowers the boiling point because the low pressure, and the water boils and the bubbles form and the bubbles collapse. It makes noise, and so cavitation will give you away. Well, you can travel faster without cavitating at a deeper depth. That's just an example of something that where the depth could make a tactical.
Well, holy shit, man!
This is like deep stuff right here.
I mean, just from a tactical standpoint, you don't realize there's so much math behind this type of stuff, or physics, or any of it. I mean, I left high school going, I'm never going to use calculus ever again. I graduated AP calculus, and now I'm having a hard time.
The submarines would be a good recruiting a good recruiting format for like why math can be cool, because like killing with math, because like periscope math, like one of the thing officers like there's a lot of mathletes in the submarine officer world, and as a baby officer you're on the scope and you have to learn you have to learn how to do the sine tables in your head, and so what is distance to track, 30-degree angle on the bow, sine of 30 is 0.5, 4,000 yards. What is the time to CPA? I don't know,
Oh my God. Wow. I had no idea.
I thought it was complicated. I mean, and this was actually going to be one of my questions for you is, accuracy of what you see in a movie compared to what you actually go through. And more so, like, I understand there's going to be differences, but like when they're doing the mapping and they're drawing stuff out and they're talking all that jargon. It's like, do you watch those movies and go, God, that's painful?
I'm completely insufferable in any submarine movie, and pretty much any submariner is gonna be, and because you're just like, it's not like that, it's like this. What's funny is the things that they get right. They'll get some like silly inconsequential detail right, and then there'll be like really important things that they get wrong, but the main thing I can say is that the movies don't capture the complicated stuff, and I'm sure it's this way in the Army too, because the stuff that's really cool, you got to have some professional expertise to know why it's cool. And if you don't have that professional expertise, you're going to spend an hour trying to explain it.
Yeah.
That's why anytime I give a tour to my to family comes on board, I always make sure my wife's with me, because I'll start nerding out on the fire control system and like, oh, this is where we derive the firing solution based on the sonar frequencies, and she's like, show them the fire axe. The fire axe is cool.
That's hilarious.
Fire axe.
That's hilarious. I mean, there are so many different nuances, or so many nuances to being in or on water, and stuff that we would never even think about, right? We did reconnaissance. He was on a tank. I did light. I was on a Bradley. Airborne. Were you ever on a Striker?
No.
Okay, so but we can pick up on those nuances pretty quick as we start to transition. Stuff that we never think about is like water survival. Like, what kind of stuff do you guys have to train for? That it doesn't matter whether you're the smartest person on the submarine or licking the walls of the submarine.
Yeah.
You have to know this. Like, what?
So the you have to know this stuff is actually not necessarily survival. The swimming and stuff like that, you do a little bit of that in boot camp, and like at the Naval Academy, you have to swim in a uniform for 40 minutes and stuff like that. They call it the 40-year swim. That's basically it. A man overboard is a very life-threatening situation. You're very likely to die if you go overboard of any ship, and that's one of those things that is kind of underappreciated, is just how freaking dangerous the ocean is, you know. But you have to know, as a part of the submarine culture, is damage control and firefighting, and you know how to fight flooding, how to fight a fire, and all that. It's very much of a run toward the fire culture, because we're here. You know, this is all we got, and fire is the most dangerous thing. And you wouldn't think it would, like, what would burn, but the problem is if it gets out of control, then there's no stopping it, and there's nowhere for the heat to go, and so it gets really hot really fast if a fire does get out of control, and so it's very much of a, you know, hoses on fire immediately, just wherever it is, extinguishing agent, and then we man up the full teams, and we get our full firefighting ensembles and everything. And so how to do all that is and be effective and be reliable in that sense is very much a part of the submarine dolphins that everyone wears. The pin. We talked about the pin. It's dolphins is what we call it. And it's actually, it doesn't look like dolphins. It's actually a dolphin fish. The fish is called the dolphin. It's an ugly fish, you know, but
it's kind of a flat fish, right?
Yeah.
Like the mahi-mahi?
Yeah. But people will call
it big brain on you.
Look at that big brain on Brad.
Sorry.
So people call it earning your fish, you know, or earning your dolphins, and that's a big deal for a submariner. But a big piece of it also is just that, like, understanding the ship, and so every rate on the submarine, whether it's a cook or an admin clerk or anything, he's going to have a very intimate understanding of all the pipes and valves and systems of that ship, trim and drain, and where all the water's flowing, the electrical distribution system. It's constantly memorizing diagrams and stuff like that, and getting checkouts and having people check your knowledge on it and everything to basically earn your dolphins. But a big piece of that is the damage control piece too.
See, things that people don't know.
Well, I never really thought so much about the fire. I always see them fighting the fire, running, you know, that type of thing in movies like you were talking about. But, you know, having my daughter whose house caught fire, and it was actually a lightning bolt that hit it, and the fire went out rather quickly, but that heat and smoke that came from that was so bad that it basically destroyed the entire house and all the wood and everything that's inside of it in, you know, minutes, actually, or probably 30 minutes, an hour. Along with that, though, I can remember the firefighters getting on top of the roof, and in order to release the pressure of the heat, had to saw into the roof. And when they did that, it was like a volcano that went up out of it. Think about that, and you're 800 feet or whatever depth.
They don't get to release that pressure.
You don't get to release that pressure.
Yeah.
So how does that change the atmosphere?
If your fire has gotten that out of control, you're in bad trouble.
Yeah.
You know? The way we prevent that is just we all freak out immediately as soon as when I say freak out immediately, it's not running around chaotically. It's everyone immediately knows what to do and where to go.
Yeah, put your head between your knees. Switch back, kiss your ass goodbye.
So everyone on board's a fireman, basically.
Yes.
Every. So it's kind of like the Marines. Every Marine is a rifleman. I was taught in boot camp that every sailor is a fireman.
What was that, Lud?
No, nothing.
We're not supposed to talk about Marines here.
No. Just
So what were the other locations that you served outside of Guam then? Have you?
So my first tour was on an attack sub out of Guam, and I halfway through that tour, it moved to Pearl Harbor for a major shipyard overhaul. And I spent most of the rest of the time in the shipyard there, which that shipyard sucks. No one likes it, but it has to be done.
But you're a shipyard in Hawaii.
There is a shipyard in Hawaii.
No, what I'm saying is that the shipyard sucks, but
you're in Hawaii.
Also, you're in Hawaii.
There is that. Yeah.
Could be Juneau, Alaska, or something.
Your family moved with them?
So at that point, I went married.
Okay.
I actually got married then. It was halfway through that tour that I got married. But I went to shore duty from that, and kind of the Navy rotation is you'll spend some amount of time on a sea tour, and a sea tour is you're expected to just work your butt off the whole time, and you'll do a shore tour for a couple of years, and then go back to another sea tour in between. And so,
what's your durations of sea to shore? Is it all 2 years here, 2 years there?
It's pretty rigid for officers. It's a lot less rigid for enlisted guys, just because all the different technical rates are so much more complicated. They can't really plan around that. For an officer, it's basically a 3-year division officer tour. That's as a junior officer, 2 years of shore duty, 3 years as a department head, 2 years of shore duty, 2 years as an XO, 2 years of shore duty, and then 2 years as a captain. Yeah.
That's those 2 and 3 years that you were in between there. That's 2 years out on the ship or on a submarine.
That's 2 years. Whenever the time that you're assigned to the ship, you are either underway on the ship or you're in the
it goes
ship
back to the mission thing.
Yeah.
If the ship's in port, that's where you work.
It's like you're doing your gunneries and your FTXs
and the motor pool time.
Yeah.
So it's considered arduous duty whether you're in or out, because whenever the ship is in port, you're not like hanging out. That's your office that you go to, but there's like someone angle grinding over your head.
That's wild.
Okay, so what are the different when you're talking about the ranks and everything else? What are some of the functions that basically the officers do there, and how many officers are on a submarine?
Typically, a wardroom. The wardroom is what you call on any ship the officers, because it's the room that the officers eat in. But the wardroom is typically like 14 officers. I think was what's on a typical attack sub. And
total men, how many? Or total people?
Yeah, 150.
150. Okay.
Yeah. So and then
small battalion.
So 10 to 1 ratio officer to enlist.
2 companies.
Roughly, yeah.
2 troops.
That's an infantry company.
So like the basic structure of any ship is that a division is typically going to be associated with some technical specialty. So machinery division, that they work on the gears and the pumps, and the electrical division, they're electricians. Reactor control division, they do like they're technicians that work on little electronics and soldering and stuff like that. But whenever they're standing watch, they're working as reactor operators. So, and this is another point of confusion, is that you've got your time off watch in which you're maintaining stuff or you're studying or you're doing some kind of training, and then your time on watch, which is where you're operating the ship. You're sitting at a panel, pressing buttons and stuff, or you're a watchstander walking around in a space turning valves, or you're an officer, which is you're standing in a room somewhere, barking orders and saying stuff. You don't touch anything as an officer. So, if you do, someone will slap your hand away.
You're gonna have some chief petty officer over there telling you to get your hands off of it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's a good time to roll into like, what's the culture on a submarine? Like, what is that whole experience? Because I know what it's like to be in a cavalry troop, but what is it like on a submarine?
It's got to be different in a closed environment.
Yeah.
So the coin of the realm is your qualification, the amount of watches that you're qualified to stand, and that basically as soon as you show up, it's just this binder of stuff that are all. And the way you qualify with stuff is you memorize diagrams, you get someone to sign off that you did it right. You get a checkout. You go and talk to some sailor and say, hey, can you give me a checkout on the feed system or whatever, and you stand watches, you do practicals where you'll spend time standing the watch doing certain evolutions, and then you eventually become qualified to stand a lower level watch, operating a panel or doing the, steering the boat or something like that, helm, planes, something like that. And then you move up into more and more senior watches. And that is kind of what separates the speed at which you qualify is kind of a performance factor. It's kind of the main performance factor.
Because your KPIs.
Yeah.
Key performance indicators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
sorry. I was corporate. I've been corporate for too long.
And that is what makes the difference for everything. Basically as soon as you show up, you're what's called a nub, or a non-useful body. And
that's awful.
That language is okay. Let me correct myself.
Hips.
Used to be.
Yeah.
We don't use that language anymore because it's derogatory.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I was joking with you.
Hey Kyle, what was that thing that we used to fill up Humvees? That little piece they used to put on the gas can forget what that was called.
That's a diesel spout.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. No, we've all got them. Every service got
service has
those
them, yeah.
those terms that it just seems like it's normal, but then when you say it on a podcast,
Yeah.
they're like, ooh.
Well, especially since you're still on active duty, I don't want to put you in any type of.
You might be called a scrubber load, which is, the scrubber is the thing that pulls the CO2 out of the atmosphere. If you're just generating CO2, then you're a scrubber load.
Wow. Yeah.
It's smart jokes.
Yeah, that was smart.
Yeah, right. Let me write that one.
I don't even know how to spell CO2. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So.
All right. So nub, unofficial.
Yeah. So you're a nub until you qualify to stand a watch, or you were a nub until you learn enough to qualify to stand a watch. And so you do that with great urgency so that you can support the watch bill and be, kind of part of the team. But then you're continuously learning and qualifying more.
So what happens when somebody qualifies on all of these things?
There's more things.
There's more things.
There's always a more senior watch station that you can qualify. And some of the watch stations are stood by like junior enlisted guys. Some of the watch stations are stood by, chiefs and the senior enlisted guys.
It all depends on your rate. It all depends on.
Yeah, like a E5 is not going to do brigade staff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sense.
like a sonar technician is going to stand the watches at the sonar panel.
Yeah.
But you've got other stations that aren't necessarily associated with a specific technical rating.
Yeah.
So like the helm and planes and the guys who are moving the water around to adjust the trim and trim of the ship, like that can be any rate. And so that might be an auxiliary mechanic or a torpedo man or something like that.
But how do you like, when we're talking about like shaping the culture or whatever, I mean, of a unit that's on land, I don't know why I feel like it might be different, but it seems like it would be that you have to have you have to understand the culture of the crew that you have there, and your weakest link is your worst, right? So like when you get on a sub and everything, or how do you size up the culture of that team and whether they're functioning together and how you might be able to impact that as a leader?
Depends on the level that you come in at, but the thing that I'm typically looking for is, do people feel that they can tell the truth? Do they feel that they have to cheat to win? And that's the thing that's smoke before the fire, is if people are under so much pressure that they feel that they need to cut corners or something when no one's looking, to get the maintenance done quickly, so that we can get underway. We don't affect the ship's schedule. Like, you got to crush that stuff and you got to smell that out. And some leaders can make that worse, So one of the kind of mantras that I always try to train my junior officers is don't look away, And there's this like kind of anecdotal wisdom of, hey, if someone says, hey sir, maybe you better not look at this right now, and go look away, and we'll fix this, and don't ask how it was done. The don't ask how it is done thing, that's an alarm signal, and the problem with it, is it hides problems that need to be fixed, and so you're transferring the risk of that decision down. And so it's not just dangerous, but it's also immoral. It's a thing that really frustrates me, is the concept of plausible deniability just makes me want to vomit when I hear that. Yeah. Because
there's a lot of that between the NCO or the enlisted and officer corps too. I mean, it's a culture that used to be omnipresent. It would be like, hey sir, just turn your head. It's not just a Navy thing. It was,
you're going to have pockets of that.
Everywhere.
There are units in the Army doing an inventory right now whose lieutenant is told to go somewhere else while we go find this specific thing.
Yeah. Well, that impulse is going to exist anywhere. Yeah. In any organization, anywhere, that especially any kind of high performance organization, there's going to be that impulse to don't screw with the schedule. Don't be the reason the schedule didn't. We didn't keep to the schedule. But the problem is if some leader is pounding the table saying, just deliver, I don't, just fix it, get us underway on time, and then
gray space is going to get in there.
We smile smugly whenever, and then the sailors deliver, and then I smile like, yeah, see, I told you, you had to be demanding, and don't ask like at what price did that come? What that does is, someone's cutting corners somewhere in there that's not being seen, that transfers the risk of that corner cutting down. Because if that sailor gets caught cutting those corners, I'm going to hang him out from the yardarm, But if he doesn't get caught, then I get to say we were successful. Look how successful we are. Leadership, yay.
Well, so that's the difference between management and leadership.
Yeah.
Right. Everything you're talking about is transactional in the sense that we need to meet a calendar specific thing, material type stuff, right? We're managing these things, and then we like to put it under the guise of leadership when it's successful, but then we talk about individuals' failures when it's not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you do leadership the right way,
yeah,
you don't ever have to mess with that.
And it is tough. Like like whenever every officer I've ever worked for has said, don't ever cut any corners. Make sure that you tell me if you're not ready. Make sure that you tell me. But they're not going to be happy whenever you tell them. They're going, they're going to be upset, and they're going to know why. How do we get here? It's going to be painful. But sometimes you got to say we're not ready. And
well, I mean, I think for the reasons why, maybe it's I shouldn't say that in the submarine it's different, but because it's a life or death situation in the Army too, for the same reasons that you're talking about. But shit, when you get down again in certain depths with a piece of steel
that wasn't maintained correctly because we had to meet a schedule.
It's bad, right? I can walk to wherever I got to go if my tank or my vehicle breaks down. You're like out in the middle of no damn where. It's not going to be a good situation.
It's so you've there's that.
Right.
Yeah. There's
that's a big one.
Keeping the water out of the people tank is important. And the other thing that's not really well understood necessarily is submarines. They're not normally neutrally buoyant. Like you are driving through the water to maintain your depth. So if you lose propulsion, like you're going to start sinking. So like if it's broken, like we need to be able to fix it fast. The other piece though is you're driving around a nuclear reactor and you're pulling that nuclear reactor into ports in places where people live. And so you've got a nuclear power plant that is, so you have a huge public safety obligation to get the care and feeding of that nuclear power plant right. And so we're extremely uptight about it and extremely vigilant about how we train and how we, the materials, that you making sure we're putting in a steel bolt, not a bronze bolt. All those things have massive implications on not just the ship and the lives of the sailors on board, but the lives of the people around that are trusting us to operate this very dangerous machinery well.
I like the referral that you make. I mean, we're like, oh, submarine this, and you say nuclear power plant, right? We hear nuclear power plant, we're thinking of that big weird shaped thing in the distance. It's humongous.
Thinking of Homer J. Simpson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's very important because when you phrase it like that, it puts it in a different context.
Yeah.
And I think it makes it that much more important.
The possibility for collateral damage.
Which nobody ever thinks about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that
well, it sounds like a bunch of people think that. It's just not in our circle.
Yeah. Just,
well, the Navy's nuclear power safety record is just immaculate. And it's been done very well.
Yeah. You ever watch football where the commentator's like, and he hasn't missed a field goal in 37 years.
Right. And then,
oh, shit.
Yeah.
Don't say that. Don't say that, Will.
We got you.
Yeah.
I thought the sun would go.
I don't believe in magic.
Yeah. No, that's good. He believes in math.
Yeah, he believes.
There we go.
That's right.
Yeah. So all that's to say, like, I think we can be confident that it's being done well.
Yeah.
And it is.
Well, there's lots of checks and balances, obviously.
Sounds like accountability is a big part of that culture, whether it be O to enlisted or O to O or enlisted to enlisted. Like, if you're messing up, someone's going to call you out.
Oh yeah. So one of the things that really attracted me to the submarine force as an officer is that culture of accountability, and especially like the importance of what you know being your source of respect.
Mm.
And so like whenever you show up as a junior officer, a E6 or E5 who knows his stuff, he can be like, okay, sir, I'll call you sir, and I'll salute you if I see you on the pier and all that, and I will be really interested in what you have to say whenever you're qualified. there's courtesies and everything. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek, you know,
Yeah.
like we do have military bearing and decorum and all that. But my operators, whenever the first watch that I stand as an officer is what's called engineering officer of the watch. And think like Geordi or Scotty from Star Trek, like you're back in the engine room.
I'm giving it to all these guys.
Yeah. Who it's the person that whenever the officer of the deck up forward is calling back saying, you know, something about engineering and speed or whatever, that's who you talk to. And so as the engineering officer of the watch, I'm there in the control room of the reactor. We call it maneuvering. And I've got 3 panel operators in front of me, and I've got an engine room full of mechanics running around turning valves and stuff, and the reactor operator. And if I tell the reactor operator, you know, reactor operator, shift reactor coolant pumps into fast speed, and he knows that's going to cause some, you know, reactor safety violation, he's not going to do it. And he's going to say, you know, sir, you know, recommend this or that. He's going to provide a recommendation, and he's going to refuse to do that thing. And if I say, you know, no, I'm an officer, you know, I gave you an order, he's still not going to do it. And if he does it and it causes some kind of, you know, violation that we have to explain later, he's not going to be absolved of response. You know, I will be hung out from the yardarm, but he's still going to be in trouble for obeying a stupid order, you know, and that he just is supposed to know his business. And and that's just the culture. And that's because, and it's not like the operators can just decide what they want to do and just think that they know better. It's that they're expected to know their business and to prioritize the safety of the ship and the safety of the reactor and all those things. And that creates a dynamic where the respect that is afforded to an officer is a function of his knowledge and his qualification. And I totally dug that as an officer showing up. I'm like, I get it, you know.
Needless to say, Gump would not have been on a submarine.
No, the respect. I mean, we come from a culture in the Army where it's like attention to detail, and you know, we just thought we were it. And it's more than just, you know, like drill and ceremony and attention to detail of what your bed corner looks like. I mean, we're talking about some real stuff here, which like I said, I mean, that's why I love doing
like a bronze bolt versus a steel bolt.
I mean, we never would have thought of that, right?
This is a great transition maybe into Stoicism, because that's something that's really big to you. So maybe talk about, people may have heard this word, and we talked about it off air, about how it became kind of a cultish thing too. People were, well, Stoic, you know, and tell us a little bit about that and why, you know, that's such a dear thing to you.
So the philosophy of Stoicism is blowing up right now on the internet, you know, and it has been for a few years now, but it's been around for a minute. You know, it's about 2,000 years old.
I was about to say, it's pretty old.
Yeah. So anyone ever says like, man, I was into Stoicism before it was cool, I'm like, whoa. Are you a vampire? So I discovered it while I was at the academy. So when you're showing up as an enlisted guy at the academy, you know, everyone at the service academies feels that they don't belong. That's part of the experience. But especially as a prior enlisted guy, you're like, man, I am going to be discovered at any minute that I do not belong here. And so I kind of like immediately said, I've got to get familiar with this legacy and who are the heroes. And one of the kind of the heroes at the academy that you see a statue and, you know, see his name around is a guy named Vice Admiral Stockdale, who is a very important kind of heroic figure from the Vietnam War, he was a commander of the POWs for a long time, for like 7 years in the torture camp where the pilots were shot down and captured. And he was the commander of the air wing whenever he got shot down very early in the Vietnam War. Anyway, he was very into Stoicism, and that very much informed his ability to cope and to resist the torturers in his captivity. And he would later in his career write and speak extensively about this obscure Roman philosopher named Epictetus. And this was like in the 70s. And so I came across his writings while I was at the academy. I was like, this is brilliant. This is how I think about everything. And you know, it is a philosophy that has a lot to do with resilience and how you process your emotions, what you value. And it's all the things that you really value in a warrior. And so that has kind of resonated with me throughout my career. I really I learned it at the academy and kind of thought that I fully understood it, and until I started writing on it and learned that, you know, there was a lot more that I didn't know. But that's kind of how I got into it.
So
I was at the academy.
Layman's terms, what is Stoicism for those of us that don't know what it is?
Okay, so it
Brandon.
is a philosophy that it started in Greece, about 300 BC, and that was during the same Greek philosophy scene where you had in Athens, where you had Socrates and you had the Platonics and the Cynics, and the Stoics were one of those groups, Epicureans, all those, and the Athens philosophical scene kind of collapsed after a couple hundred years of thriving. And then Stoicism reappeared in Rome a couple hundred years later and became kind of a big thing there. And that's where, and it's from those Roman Stoics that we have their writings, and the famous ones are a guy named Seneca, a guy named Epictetus, and then Marcus Aurelius, who was, he was the emperor and gladiator. And that's kind of our source for it. But kind of what they believed is that, if I'm emotional about something, it's not that thing that's making me emotional, it's my judgment about that thing. And that kind of informs the reputation that they have for being, very self-controlled and very, very much in control of their emotions. The key concept of it is virtue. What is virtue? Being what you're supposed to be as a man, as a human being. And their keystone concept is that virtue is the sole good, is what they said. Virtue is what matters, and if it's not virtue, then it is indifferent. And so things that are like health or wealth or all these things that I have no power over, no ultimate power over. I can do everything right and still get sick. I can do everything right and still be poor. So those things are what they would call indifference. And basically the separation of what are indifference from moral factors or my virtue is kind of the separation line between what merits my emotional investment or what doesn't. So if someone, insults me at work or something like that and I'm pissed off about it, then it's my fault that I'm pissed off at it. That's my own judgment, my own internal judgment that I've been harmed in some way that is making me pissed off. And that's what I've got to correct to get my emotions in check. And that's kind of the basic idea.
That last part is, I think, what's critical here, because when you think about when somebody says, oh, he's very stoic, that's what you're referencing, is that the individual is actually not outwardly showing any type of emotion or letting the emotions override themselves.
Yeah. It is about controlling yourself and your reactions to things and that's part of being an adult, and that's kind of why it resonates so much with the military. And Stoicism has always been a big feature of the military, and that's kind of part of what I write about. When I call it a warrior philosophy, that's what I'm talking about. It's not. It may be new to Silicon Valley, but it's not new to the military.
Yeah,
And we've been here for a long time, and you've had a lot of philosophical thinking in the military for a long time.
How do you teach somebody Stoicism? Like how does somebody learn those behaviors?
Well, I recommend a book or something. It's not going to resonate with everybody. My book's not the one I would recommend for someone who's new to it. Something like Donald Robertson's book, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, is kind of put in the context of Marcus Aurelius, who's famous, and really remarkable man if you're not familiar with him. But there have been people who've said like we should integrate Stoicism into military training. That's not something that I would do. I don't necessarily push that, because I feel like we would put a reflective belt on it.
You had to go there.
We would, right?
Absolutely.
I love it.
We would make it lame.
I don't think it's one size fits all. The belt or Stoicism, right?
Yeah, it's not gonna work for everybody.
No.
And it's one of those things that like you can have the like Silicon Valley kind of very shallow look. Oh yeah, control my emotions. Or you can dive into the rabbit hole and see how deep it goes, and it goes very deep, and that's kind of what I write on, is like, okay, let's follow this rabbit hole as deep as it goes, without having to get it into the point where you need to have a philosophy PhD to understand the writing. It's like, how would I explain this to some smart person in the military if tasked to do so? And that's kind of how it's written.
I think societally we take terms like Stoicism or anything else, it's the flavor of the month, right? And then the definition of it, or that word, gets bastardized. and
Yeah.
it becomes something completely different. And then it's just a cool word to say.
Like how everyone's a narcissist now.
Yeah.
Well, the word stoic is an adjective for unemotional. That's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fad of, popular stoicism, I got mixed feelings on it. It's like week 2 of reading stoic blogs that you get your card in the mail that's like you can judge everyone else and say they're doing it wrong. And like if everyone, really read the Stoics as deeply as I did, then they would agree with me about everything. I don't care, but there's a
Comes
lot
with a bag of crystals.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of depth there, and I think as a fad, it's a benign one. It's a good one. It's a good trend. And so
Yeah.
you've got a lot of the people on the internet that are like serious about their stoicism, and they're really upset that it's being used for profit. And
Wait,
stuff like
you're not
that.
supposed to get upset.
That's not
Yeah, right.
Well, how has it impacted you personally,
Well,
especially as a leader in the military?
yeah. So there I was on my submarine, and water starts pouring in, and I break out my Marcus Aurelius, I turn to the page, and Marcus says, "You're gonna die, you stupid idiot." That's not how it works.
But be stoic about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of implications within the Stoic philosophy to how to be a moral person. And that's what gets kind of left out of the shallow piece is people are attracted to it because they want to be more disciplined. They want to be more self-controlled. They want to have, better reactions whenever their stocks don't go the way they want them to. What they don't realize is that all those things, the self-control, the discipline, the courage, all those things are moral factors. That is what morality actually is. It's not just sharing is caring and helping little old ladies across the street and all these soft things. It like being what you're supposed to be. That's what morality is. That's what moral factors are. And the application in my life on a submarine has been a good example of it is, what does a good man do? How does a good man react to this situation relative to how a good officer does? So I think back to when I was a kid, my dad would tell me that, hey, if I'm ever struggling between being a good professional in my job or being a good man, I go with being a good man and let the rest sort itself out. And what I'd come to learn later is that actually has a deep philosophical grounding. I think to a scenario where I was on the submarine as a junior officer, and I had a member of my crew one of my many responsibilities as an officer, as a junior officer, was I was the force protection officer of my crew, which means I managed all the admin and paperwork that had to do with, force protection and, security and stuff like that. One of the annoying details of that job was being responsible for the paperwork that has to go through if someone wants to take leave to a foreign country, which I don't know if any of you guys have ever done that while actively serving, but it is a pain. There's a lot of paperwork and training and stuff like that. Well, there was a sailor on board, and it's like a Saturday, and his wife, he had married a fairly unstable woman, and she was in Brazil with their kids, and she basically performed a suicidal act that left her in a situation where she was not expected to live, and she's there with his kids. And so the chief is like calling me in, like, "Hey, sir, like we got to get this guy on a plane, to Brazil." I'm like, "Yeah, we do need to get this guy on a plane to Brazil." And he's like, there's this flight, we're trying to get him on it, but like we need to sign off on this paperwork for his security stuff. I'm like, "No, he's got like weeks of training and stuff to do to be able to do that." And I can't get a hold of any bosses at the time. And it's just kind of like, shit, what do I do? What does a good officer do here versus what does a good man do? And I'm just like, well, a good man signs it and we'll figure it out later. Like I printed out as much of the training as I could, like, here, read all this, like, Godspeed, man, but go. And I'm just gonna, we're gonna figure it out. And we figured it out, and sure, I got an ass chewing for it, but we figured it out. Yeah. And he got to where he could take care of his kids. So that was a scenario that like applied that be a good man versus be a good officer thing. And what I eventually would come to learn is that that's what the best officers do. That's what the best anything's worthwhile do, is be a good human being. And if the thing that your individual role is something that compels you to be something other than a good human, then it's probably not a legitimate role. And that is within Stoicism. They have these views on the different roles that we fulfill in life, and the role that we have to play. Some of them are chosen, some of them are assigned to us, whether it's, my job, or it's, being a father or a brother, those things. But within those roles are lots of attendant moral obligations that I've got to fulfill. But if any of those roles compel me to do something that a good human wouldn't do, then either I'm misunderstanding the obligations of that role, or that role is forfeit and illegitimate. So if my role is to be the guy that calls little old ladies and cons them out of their life insurance, that's probably a shitty role, and I should probably get another one, But
no, it makes perfect sense, because I think one of the things that you probably talk about is the role and the difference between, saying, being a good person and being a warrior, where there are times where you have to be that hard-charging individual and everything else, but yet also don't try to allow that being a good person to override that, those tough times.
Yeah. What I argue whenever it gets into the warrior stuff and, the morality of war and the morality of killing and things like that. And I have to be very clear. I've never been in combat. That's just not my role. I've never been detected. The morality of warfare, I argue, if it's what a good person would do, it's not an immoral act, no matter how terrible it is. And so that is a controversial position. A lot of people will say that war is a justified evil, or war involves a lot of justified evil. I think from a Stoic standpoint, from the standpoint of Stoic morality, if a good person would do it, all things considered, considering all the different moral factors that are weighing on me and the obligations that bring me to the spot, if I have to press that button for whatever reason, and a good person would do it, it's not an evil act. It just may be very much dispreferred, and I very much prefer not to do that. But
I'd say you can tag somebody as being virtuous too, as being able to differentiate between what you just talked about, right? Is it indifferent, or is it something that a good person would do because they know the difference?
Yeah.
They know what indifferent or bad is. They know what good is from a human standpoint, from a man's standpoint. You can be virtuous, still do that act that most people would be like, that's kind of bad. Well, not from the lens that we're looking at it, all things.
It's like weighing the greater good.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you consider all things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're different. Whenever you study philosophy, there are different moral systems and moral rules sets that would lead you to different paths. And I think that kind of the one that I prefer to defer to is the original concept of virtue ethics, which is, what does a good human do, all things considered. And I think it's important to think through this stuff before you get into the moral crises, so you don't have a crisis.
Absolutely. I mean, what you're describing is, I think, some of the struggles a lot of veterans have when they get out of a combat situation, and how they're processing these things that you're describing. It sometimes can consume them in not a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I don't have any experience personally with PTSD or with moral injury. Those concepts are different. But I've studied a lot, but I have dealt a lot with different cases and different people within my command with mental health issues of various sorts, and coping and adjustment issues. And I find that Stoicism and the Stoic ways of thoughts are very constructive towards that end. And that's kind of why I talk about it within the military. Is it would be really great if people read this stuff, because what you learn, and if you go through a cognitive behavioral therapy regimen, something like that, is the whole regimen of cognitive behavioral therapy was developed in like the 1950s, but it was developed by people who were very deeply read into Stoics, which is an interesting trivia point that not a lot of people are aware of. But they basically adapt a lot of Stoic patterns of thought and practices and ways of preparing oneself for different kinds of emotional hardship, and they adapted them into therapeutic approaches. And so it's not necessarily saying that therapists are just doing Stoicism. It's not that, but it's kind of like the difference between long before we figured out aspirin, we figured out that you could chew on the bark of a willow tree and cure a headache. And then we eventually learned, no one had any idea why, but it worked.
It became aspirin, yeah.
Yeah, we eventually figured out that there's salicylic acid in that, and you can synthesize
That's why the moose are crazy out in Wyoming or wherever it is, because they chew those damn bushes all the time. So I can totally hear what you're saying, because I think when you think back about, hey, we talk about transition, we build up these soldiers or these people, to fight in combat, and then when they get off active duty, they're not prepared. Same thing is true as when we met with, some individuals who are really into the brain side of things of post-traumatic stress and the effects of combat. We said, hey, if we could prepare these individuals better so that they know what to expect or what may happen and the psychological challenges that may come from being exposed to these combat situations, we would at least prepare them. That's kind of what you're saying. You would at least give them some of the tools and stuff that they might be able to use later on. After they're already going through post-traumatic stress, it might be harder to listen to a therapist who's trying to explain what you're explaining.
Yeah, I would never recommend Stoicism to somebody who needs therapy. That would be malfeasance, or malpractice. Like, if the person needs therapy, they should have therapy. But as a preventive, I think it is very, very effective. And it turns out that the ancient Stoics did too, and they talked about mental health then. And they talked about being your own doctor, and you're training yourself to treat yourself. And that's really what therapy often is doing, is training you in these different interventions and ways of thinking and patterns of thought to deal with your situations constructively. And people have been talking about these things for thousands of years in one form or another. And that's part of the reason why I treat it as I consider it a warrior philosophy. So I work at the Pentagon, right? And outside of the Pentagon are all these glittering skyscrapers called Pentagon City, and it's all these different, merchants that sell their wares to the U.S. government. Imagine if someone in one of those buildings, said, "Hey, I've got a vaccine that increases resistance to things like depression and emotional trauma," and would we be interested in that? And the answer is obviously we would, because we're hemorrhaging people to the mental health industry, and the mental health complex as, our active duty members all the time. We lose people.
Yeah.
And of course the military would be interested in something like that. But there's more to it than that. Like, what if that merchant said, well, I've got this other vaccine over here, since you're interested in that this one over here boosts your self-discipline and your ability to control yourself, whether it's in the battle line or, it's in the chow line, maybe having some impact on that fitness issue that I couldn't help but noticing, would we be interested in that? And absolutely. And then then that says nothing about the ethical element too, and the moral element, and potentially having something to do with your, everything from liberty incidents to, wartime incidents and things like that. So I think it's a very valuable and useful philosophy for people in the military or people who have, it's useful for everyone, but I write about it from that context.
So you've been mentioning several times about your book as you were going through this, and so I want to give you an opportunity to state the title and where can people find it? I'm assuming on Amazon and stuff like that online. Or?
Yeah, sure. So I appreciate that. The book is called Stoicism as a Warrior Philosophy, and it is available anywhere you get books. It's on Amazon, it's in Barnes and Noble and stuff like that. I released in the UK last month, and it's like, it comes out, it's going to be available in the bookstores on the 13th here, and again, if someone is just absolutely new to Stoicism, it's probably not the right but it's more for someone who's interested in it from a military perspective and how it plays into the morality of military service. That's the subtitle, is the morality of military service. So the questions like, am I forfeiting my moral autonomy by being a member of the military, or is patriotism bad, from a Stoic standpoint? Because there are people who argue that it is, and I argue that's ridiculous, but here's why, and I present the evidence, and things like that. So it's a philosophical argument. It's kind of given me the opportunity to play at the philosopher role while I'm not a professional philosopher. I'm a ship driver, but it's allowed me to kind of get into this hobby, and kind of I'm very lucky to have been published, because it is kind of a weird book.
No, it sounds fascinating. And I think, like what we were talking about, again, if you can give them the tools and stuff that warriors will need, because the whole idea is that you're training up for those experiences that may happen later on. So having those types of books and stuff, I think, would be helpful. How many years do you have left? Are you gonna, before you retire?
I'm gonna age out of driving ships at some point, but I'm not yet. Probably once I've aged out of driving ships, I'll probably move on, do something else. But I don't know. I don't really have any desire.
Are you like looking at 06 or?
So basically the next thing that will happen is I will, and this next summer, I'll go to the pipeline to train to be a captain of ship. And there's a million things that can happen in between now and then to make me not be a captain of a ship. So there's nothing's guaranteed, but that's what I hope for, and that's kind of the path that everything seems to be going. If you successfully execute a command tour, you'll typically promote to 06. I'm not, like, that's never been my focus, or never been my motive. After that experience, I don't know what I'll do. I'll probably it's probably time to retire at that point, but I don't know. I might stay in and keep working at the Pentagon or something like that.
What do most people who come from your background end up doing when they get out into the private sector? Very curious.
A lot of people work in industry. A lot of some people go into the nuclear power industry, but really that's kind of more if you get out at the junior officer level. The guys that get out at this level, it's typically some kind of engineering management or something like that.
Gotcha.
I have a kind of a subspecialty in financial management, so I might be involved in something like that, but I'm really more interested in kind of strategy and policy and philosophy. So I wouldn't mind getting into, nuclear weapons policy or something like that, because that's a very interesting world that I think that we need smart people thinking about and thinking hard about. And so I worry about it, and so that's a thing that I might want to focus on.
Yeah, especially now that we're possibly getting back into detonating, it's kind of scary.
Well,
without getting into the politics side, but still, at the same token, it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, well, it's a bipartisan thing, that the kind of order where we have all these treaties that have kind of held arms control in a certain place. That world has been unraveling for a long time, and it transcends any administration or anything like that. Basically you have all these arms control treaties, or you had all these arms control treaties that were in place from the Cold War, but then it was a bilateral thing between the United States and Russia. Well, China's come on the scene, and they don't, they were never part of that, and they don't care to be,
right.
Right. And so whatever agreements you have with Russia, regardless of who is actually meeting their end of the deal, or whatever, you've got this other party out here, and then you've got North Korea has nukes, you've got Iran has nukes, and like no one's interested in deals. So it is a complicated, multifarious world, and basically we have to be ready. We have to be on guard, and we're ready.
Well, I mean, I think they need probably more people like you that had your background lead, at least lend some strategy, some decision making and stuff like that. That's probably going to be more so needed, because it has been quiet. You haven't really probably had to think about it a whole lot. I'm not saying you, but I'm saying powers that be.
It's been quiet on the surface.
It's always been there, and it's always been. You've always had pockets of people who are intensely interested and knowledgeable about it, and very, very cold professionals that have been working this stuff. But you kind of want it out of the press. The main thing everyone just needs to know about nuclear weapons is they work. They're ready, they work, and we will use them if we have to. That's what everyone needs to understand. And beyond that, it just like I don't want people having to think about this stuff. And if we're doing our jobs right, they don't.
Yeah. I try not to think about the nuclear warhead that's sitting out in the coastline of Savannah, Georgia. Since we're sitting here in Atlanta.
Yeah. The one that's in the mud somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere out there. Yeah.
That's in some guys.
That's why I don't go to Savannah. Stay my ass at Noonan or West.
Well, man, I really appreciate you coming here, Will, and sharing not only your knowledge about submarines and educating not just us, but all of our audience and stuff. It's been a real blast in talking with you about that. And I think there's a lot of similarities to what you brought to the table to what we experienced within the military. That we each have our own way of doing different things, but we all have, we're all fighting for the same mission at the end of the day. And so, but I appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing your wisdom, talking about Stoicism, bringing your book to the table, and we'll make sure that we put that out there so that they can go out and purchase it. But just coming here and being a part of all this.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Hey, one thing I will leave your listeners that I kind of like. It's a saying that I has brought a lot of value to me. One of the things in the study of philosophy, and it goes all the way back to whenever you had all these different rival schools and they were competing with each other and criticizing each other, is the appeal to coherency. And coherency is kind of like, do all these different ideas I hold in my head, or these things I claim to believe, do they agree with each other? Do they agree with the way I'm living my life, and do they agree with each other, or does this idea is it incompatible with that? And so what one philosopher would do to another is say, like, you claim that school claims that, but that's incompatible, and therefore their philosophy is defunct and this one's good, mine's better. Anyway, that appeal to coherency is extremely useful from a standpoint of like sorting things in life. One of my favorite philosophers is actually not a Stoic, but it's a guy named Cicero. And he's a Roman political philosopher, a Roman statesman, and he's very actually important to the founding of the United States. But Cicero took an idea that Socrates, had said hundreds of years before him, and adapted it. Socrates had said, doing the Socrates thing of just asking these impossible questions, it's like, what is good? What makes something good? Well, something is good if it is both honorable and useful. Is kind of the conclusion of a lot of this dialogue that Socrates has. Hundreds of years later, Cicero takes that idea, says, okay, well, as we all know from Socrates, what is good or what is honorable and useful is good. But we can infer from that, if we really think about it, that if it is truly honorable, then it is truly useful. And if it is not truly honorable, then it is not truly useful. That which is honorable must be useful, and that which is useful must be honorable. And that is the appeal to coherency. And I think that is a very powerful idea in kind of sorting what is right and what I should do with my life, what I should do on any given day, is if that act, that thing that I want to do, or that I'm trying to talk myself into, or trying to rationalize, if it's not truly honorable, then it's not going to be truly useful in the long run. It might seem expedient in the short run, but in the long run, it's going to bite me. It's going to bite me, or my organization, or my loved ones, or something. And I think that is a very helpful sorting mechanism. And so I'd leave that with your listeners.
Appreciate that, brother.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Hey, thanks.
Appreciate you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.